What's up, everybody? Brett Okamoto from ESPN with UFC bantamweight Cory Sandhagen, who I guess is in the middle of camp for your fight on August 5th against Umar Nurmagomedov. Do you are you one of those guys that kind of you're always in camp, like the whole year is a camp, or do you like to have like this is my fight camp for a fight coming up on August 5th, like a certain timeline?
No, I like having like a fight camp, but I would say that all year round I'm like learning all year round, but the like physical getting banged up piece is a lot more in camp than it is outside of camp.
How does it feel being like 4 weeks out? Is it just like, oh my God, I can't wait for these 4 weeks to be up? Or like, do you enjoy camp or like that physical process of getting ready for it?
No, I just take it. I'm like I try to do my best to just do my best every single day. So it's more about no, I don't. I just try to do my best every day. Whatever. I take like a lot of notes in my journal, and I like do like a decent amount of visualization of technique and stuff. So I just pretty much try to make sure that the day is getting accomplished what needs to be accomplished as far as like building technical skill or whatever it is I need to do.
What do you think writing down notes and journaling does for you, especially during camp? What is it? What's the benefit of it for you?
It keeps me organized. Like there's just so many things to practice, and I videotape all of my rounds too. So I like go through, make a bunch of notes about what I did good, what I didn't do good, what needs to be better. And then like that changes week by week because then like sometimes I'll get really good at one thing and then neglect something completely, and then I got to go back and get good at that again. So yeah, so journaling, I mean, I wouldn't call it really journaling as much as I would call it like just taking notes and making sure that I'm staying on top of everything that I'm doing.
Not like your online diary that you called your Instagram recently, which I thought Kamaru was spot on. Did he put a comment on it that said you're the number one content creator out there right now, and I'm having a hard time disagreeing with him. You're having some fun on Instagram, it seems like.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to like get it going, you know. I think that the reels are really cute. Like they're cute, all done with them, and I could choose a song and stuff. They're like it's like scrapbook stuff. So yeah, I guess it's like a cute little thing that I got going on.
It is. It is. Taking dips in the water. What did you describe? Man walking around Denver the other day. What did you? How did you describe it? I thought whatever your caption was, it was great.
Hell, dude, man, I'm just a normal dude.
And you get to use it to interact with your fans. And I thought that I was curious to ask you, what were some of the interactions? You said that some haters came out and told you why you're even taking this fight. What was the reaction to you taking this fight, would you say?
Yeah, everyone still thinks that I suck at wrestling, even though when you think about it, I can't really name a time outside the Sterling fight where I was on my back for longer than maybe 5 or 10 seconds. Um, the time that I think I was on my back for the longest was against Dillashaw, and then I like ripped his knee in half. So everyone still like thinks that my grappling isn't that good. So and the Dagestanis kind of have this like aura of being these like superhuman people still. And that's like not true. They're just doing different things that people haven't picked up on yet. And I have like a really good and like smart team of coaches to help me navigate that. And then I also have a decent amount of training partners from that part of the world that can also help me get really good at it too. Um, so yeah, that's okay. That's like fandom though. Like people like picking a side and then playing for a team and all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's been the response though, just because everyone thinks I can't grapple, but I can, and I'm like really excited.
Yeah. Well, does is it motivating? Like, does it kind of give you a little extra in camp to think that like, because I know you guys like to prove people wrong. I hear that all the time from fighters. Like, do you actually feel that during camp, or that's just like something you see on Instagram and then you go about your day? You don't really take anything from it.
On some days it motivates me when I'm like having a grumpy day, then yeah, I'll be like, man, I'm gonna show all these wrong, not to call the fans or anything, but only specific fans. But uh but yeah, it does like light a little bit of a fire underneath me. But for a lot of the reason that I do martial arts is for like my own reasons. It's not to prove anything. Like I also said in that video, which I would like to highlight, that I think is really important, and maybe a way that I think differently than some of the other people, is that I literally don't want to be the world champ if I'm not the actual best in the world. Like, it's not a shiny sticker to me. It's not like something that I want to cherry pick and navigate the easiest route to. It's something that I want to earn, and it's something that I want to actually say that I did it in the most difficult way. And like that's kind of the way that I am. I'm not playing for a shiny sticker, like I'm playing to be the best.
And I think that's obviously an inspiring way to look at it. How do you balance that with like the business side? Because what you're saying makes perfect sense, but I also think like other smart people would tell you like, Cory, you can do that, but you can also like not put yourself in situations where you're taking on a lot of risk, and there's financial rewards to being the champion. Even if you get it ahead of time and then you can defend the championship a bunch of times, you can still do what you're doing and not take risks, or at least try to mitigate risks. Like, how do you balance those? Does it make sense what I'm kind of saying?
Yeah, that's whack though. Like that's like a whack way to live to me. Everyone gets to write their life story how they want to write their life story, and I'm good. Like I'm not wealthy, but I make good money, man. Like if you would have asked me 10 years ago if I would be making what I'm making in the UFC, I would think that you're crazy. And
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be like braggy or anything, but I also grew up in an interesting part of Colorado too, where like it's almost like Aurora, Colorado is like separated by a street where it's like lower class people on one side of the street and then middle and middle upper class on the other side of the street. And I grew up fortunate enough to be like in the middle upper class area, but I had a ton of friends growing up that I would consider brothers now still that grew up on the other side. And so like money, it was never a motivator for me. Like money, I'm not greedy. Like I'm not a greedy guy. I'm not like that doesn't do it for me, So when I hear people get really excited about, oh, I want to take this money fight, I want to do this, it's like, man, don't you have enough money, man? Like, how much money do you want? You want all the money in the world? Like, you definitely need to get paid what you're worth, but that has never motivated me. Also, like the other business side of the thing, again, like I'm in the UFC because I believe that I'm one of the toughest fighters in the world who works harder than most of the people that I've ever met in my life. There's only a couple of people that I've met that I feel like I can be like, oh yeah, like that guy is about that life too, and I don't want to be sitting in a spot where someone else deserves it. Like I grew up with one of my favorite movies being Major Payne. And so like I often like refer to that as like, do you want to win it? No. Do you want to steal it? No. Do you want to earn it? Yes, I want to earn it, like and another interesting piece about martial arts that I think people don't get to see the background piece of is we all train at gyms that are like community gyms for the most part. So you have a lot of different levels of people in those gyms. And I'm surrounded by guys that are grinding hard to try to even just get their UFC debut or get some type of bigger promotions debut just so that they can make enough money so that they can quit their job.
Mm.
And I'm like an introspective guy, and I like looking at the world from like a wider perspective than just like my own selfish views. Sometimes I'm still definitely selfish in my own ways, but when I see these guys just going like how I had to be before I got signed to the UFC, working overnights, just having like really tough lives until they start getting paid for it. I don't want those guys to be doing that if they're better than me, and like you can call that a stupid career move or whatever, but that's like a lame way to go about life, and it's kind of like doesn't have much honor and dignity in it. So yeah, that's how I balance it, is I just try to be myself and live by my own values and write my own story the way that I want to write my story and not the way that other people think that I should.
Yeah, yeah, man, that's a phenomenal answer. And obviously, so you're coming from this standpoint, this perspective of like you want to earn everything. How do you feel about facing a guy that it seems like there is a push for? Like, you've earned your number 4 spot in the rankings. You've had 12 fights in the UFC. You've faced the top guys like Umar. Everybody is high on him. Has he earned this right to fight you? Someone say yes, someone say no. Like, what is your opinion on that, of giving a guy an opportunity where it's like you have definitely earned everything you've had, and maybe you're given like an opportunity to another guy, like has he earned it or not?
So and I don't know. That's kind of hard to say because even I don't know how good Umar really is. Like even when I watch his fights, like before the UFC and even in the UFC, he hasn't fought like a challenge that is, where you could watch it and be like get much from it, to be honest, because but he has been like levels above the guys that he's fought, but the guys that he's fought haven't been, like around the level that I feel like I've been competing in for the last couple of years. So but MMA is different because he came in like you don't come in like fresh out of college, just like how like NFL or NBA players do, where you get like where there's just it's like a really dynamic thing. He's 16-0, so he's got a lot of fights. He's got no losses. That could mean something or that could not mean anything. I think he's really good. When I watch him, I think personally that he's a very, very good fighter. He's a very tricky guy to figure out, and people haven't been able to figure him out really at all. They're going with approaches that are just like really silly. And yeah, so I think he's really good. Like if I'm being really honest, I think that like he'd beat Cheeto. I think that he would beat like a lot of these other guys at the top too. So I think the UFC sees that. I see that. Like that's definitely like a real thing. He definitely comes from a really good camp. He definitely has had good coaches his whole life. He comes from a part of the world where combat sports are giant. And yeah, I think that he's definitely the real deal. Has he earned it? Like, I don't know, maybe, but I don't really care.
Yeah.
He like I see him as a really good fighter, and that's why I want to fight him. If it was someone who I was like, like if it was like a WWE superstar and they wanted me to fight that guy, I'd be like, go yourself, But
Yeah.
I think Umar is a really good fighter.
I don't know if because I know some guys pay attention to this, sometimes other guys don't. Do you think he'll be the betting favorite in this fight?
It doesn't look like it. I try not to look at the silly stuff on Instagram too much, but I did see somewhere he came out a favorite, which again, that's like that's fan stuff. That's like people thinking that Dagestanis are invincible and Russian fighters are invincible and that I can't grapple. And they think that it's like a perfect matchup, so that's okay with me. I'm not going to get hung up on that stuff because I'm pretty sure that that's how those numbers work.
That's crazy. I hadn't seen a betting line for this fight, but I was thinking to myself, like, it's going to be an interesting one. Because obviously you've looked very good, but he's been such a big favorite over all of his other opponents. I just really didn't know where the line was going to be. Have you always had like experience with these guys from Dagestan and Russian wrestling? Like, have you had that going back a long ways, or is that something you kind of introduced more for obvious reasons for this camp?
No, I mean, ever since they've kind of made themselves a little bit more pronounced in the sport, they've been around a lot more. Like I trained with a guy named Mohammed Naimov for the last couple of years, who's from Tajikistan, who's a really good fighter. We got a couple guys in town from Kazakhstan, very similar type of wrestling. And then like fortunate for me, and then like I have Tan Lee, who I train with a lot too, who has that like really karate style, who's probably one of the best strikers I've ever trained with in my life. And then I'm fortunate enough to have a really athletic striking coach too. Like he's not like this like big fat guy like he's sometimes like holding it. Like Christian Allen isn't that. Christian Allen is a super athletic guy even at whatever age he is, because he won't tell any of us. So he's able to really like mimic that style a lot. And I feel like when you're fighting someone that has a very unique style, you just have to get that look a bunch. And I have people that can mimic it, and I have people that can actually do it for me too. So and like are actually good at it and actually understand like the nuances of it and everything. And it's like a really good style, like that part of the world definitely has it all figured out really well. So yeah, it's been like fun to learn, like I feel like I've gotten like a lot better, which is corny as it sounds, is like really important to me. So
yeah, for sure. And you said that some people look at these Dagestanis and they see them as like superhuman. When you first interacted with that style, did it feel like that? Like were you like, man, this is a tricky style? Like when you first have your initial impression of it?
It poses like different challenges for sure. It's not like American wrestling where it's like singles and doubles. They do like a lot of trips. They do a lot of like lower body stuff, upper body stuff. I think what the Dagestanis have just figured out more than anyone else is they just figured out how to hold people down the best. Like American wrestling and a lot of wrestling just in general I feel like when you get a takedown, you get 2 points or however many points you get, and then that's the end of that exchange. And then you kind of just like lay there until the ref like resets you into a different position or from standing or whatever. So those guys don't get super good at holding people down outside of like really specific areas. And the Dagestanis have just figured that out sooner than most people, you know? But like I said, man, like it's hard for me to name a time where I've been on my back for like longer than 5 or 10 seconds. Initially, when I was learning wrestling, I knew that if I wasn't going to be the best wrestler in the world, I had to be the best guy at getting up in the world. So that's something that I've been working on for a really, really long time. And then on top of that, like adding in like really, really solid wrestling in the past few years with my coach Carrington Banks, who like goes the extra mile to help me. I've gotten really good. So
Like as I listen to you kind of talk, and a lot of people that like your interviews because you're so cerebral, you're good at explaining yourselves. I think you're a deep thinker when it comes to this sport. Like we talk so much about like the technique and stuff that we were just discussing. Are there any fighters that you've like really paid attention to just from their mental approach and like the way they think about fighting? Like, is there anybody that you're just a fan of, just their mental side of the game?
Yes and no. So I like when guys are honest. I remember growing up and I remember watching, because I was like a really big basketball player. I remember watching like interviews of some of these basketball players or reading biographies on these basketball players when I was younger. And a lot of them made them seem like they were these mystical creatures that weren't human, that had like these superpowers that like you couldn't obtain if you weren't born with them or didn't come from a certain situation in life or whatever, you know. So I grew up kind of with that like belief where I felt like I had to have something happen to me in order for me to obtain these abilities. And that I don't like. Like I don't like projecting that message. That's why I try to be a really normal guy, is because, you know, like I didn't grow up with the easiest life by any means, you know, like I definitely grew up with my too, but I also feel like I'm totally normal, and I like the idea of passing on a message where you don't have to have some stupid, like crazy physical attribute or mental attribute or something happened in your life or you were raised in the sport or whatever in order to obtain this goal. Like you just have to work really hard and you have to be really thoughtful about what you're doing. And so yeah, so there are people that I do kind of look up to in some ways, but then I hear them talk about like manifesting, or I hear them talk about how they attribute a lot of it to like a higher power and a god, or like, you know, and that's totally okay. If that's like your life view, then that's totally okay. But I also think that it's okay to just say that doing your best is what will take you really, really far. And that's what I try to do every day. And I honestly think that if there is any magic that's happening in the world, it happens by doing your best every day and caring about something a lot.
Yeah. Well, if that's your message, you're certainly projecting it well. I mean, the way you carry yourself, the way you fight, and then in your absolutely terrible, corny trash talk after a big win on live television. I mean, if there was one request I have for Nashville, is to come up with something that is better than "I got something for you to eat and it don't taste too good."
uh,
Have there been good reactions to that line since you
uh,
delivered it?
I mean, it was supposed to be terrible and corny. So yeah, you're very
Yeah.
complimentary in the way that you described it. So yeah.
Well, I can't wait for the fight, man. I guess the last thing that we always say about it is just like, what kind of a fight are you expecting? You know, you talked about the wrestling, and his people seem to think that this is going to be a grappling match. What type of 5-round fight are you expecting out of this guy?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a cool fight. I think it's going to be like definitely an interesting fight. I think you have like two guys that are really good at managing space. The thing that I like about Umar is that me and him, I can tell, think a lot alike as far as like what fighting, like what to prioritize in a fight, you know. And he does a lot of those things the same as, or not the same as me, but he prioritizes the same values as me. So he just does them differently. So that's kind of what really interests me, is because I think that your style is almost like your weapon. And if you have a more modern and technical weapon, like, like a machine gun beats a sword any day of the week. So
Mhm.
I'm really interested to see who just has like a better style, because we prioritize things very similar. And I think it's going to be exciting. It's going to be interesting, and it's going to be, like super technical. And I'm not the best at being really enthusiastic and like a promo guy or anything, but this is gonna be a badass fight. Like,
Yeah.
I'm really motivated to beat Umar. Like, I want this win really badly. I want to seal this win. I want to go fight for the belt. But even before I want to fight for the belt, I really want to beat someone of that caliber from that part of the world who has this aura of unbeatableness, because I want to show people that they can if they figure it out.
Yeah, man, it is one of the fights I'm looking forward to absolutely most. I would say like top 3 matchups right now on the books for the UFC. One more thing to ask you about it, just like listening to you talk about it, it's firing me up because I want to see it. Your last fight went to decision. It was a split, and I just like, because of how just modern. I mean, modern is a good word for you to use. Your style is and your way of thinking about the fight. Like, how much confidence and faith do you have in judging? Like, do you feel like you're in a good spot, like where you will be rewarded if you do win a fight?
No, I hate it. I think that I don't want to sound like I'm some arrogant guy, but what I'm doing is like a lot more advanced than like the what the normal person at home can kind of like understand. Um, I get feedback from people all the time, like after sparring or whatever. And when I do tape my rounds, even like me myself, I'll watch them and be like, I was winning a lot more than what it looks like I was winning. And the other person will give me the same feedback. So I'm winning positionally almost at all times. And I know that the feeling that I'm giving the other person is extremely stressful with the way that I fight. And that's really hard to pick up on unless you're like really a really good thinker and a really good looker at martial arts. And yeah, the judges aren't that, man. Like, that's just I try not to shit on the judges too much, because their job is really tough. And there are plenty of fights that I watch where I'm like, that was a close one. But it's not my job to judge these things. If you're a judge, you need to be on top of the really modern things that are happening in fighting, not just like, oh, is this guy on top? Oh, is this guy landing more punches? This and that. Like, there's a whole other game that happens inside of fighting that isn't just like the actual hitting of the person, or the like super obvious on top on bottom type situations. It's way more complex than that. And unfortunately, like, I choose a style that's a little bit on the safer end and risk averting, and the judges just, and like when I do take shots, like, I don't I take them on parts of my body that are good parts of my body, not like incorrect ones. Like, I feel like, man, if you landed a bunch of blocked kicks, you would potentially, like, I don't even like that like blocked things are scored highly, like,
Mhm.
which is what it seems like it is. Like, a big piece of my like trying to get good at fighting has been make the aesthetic of it look like I'm winning instead of actually beating the person up. And that kind of just like is a sucky feeling.
Mhm.
But I could go on all day about that. But yeah, I don't like it. But that split decision was a little bit weird too, because I had a bad encounter with that judge that scored me in the other way. I had a bad encounter with that guy years ago, because he refed one of my guys' fights horrendously,
Mm.
and I let him have it, and I let him know that he did a really bad job. And so I think that that guy just didn't like me, to be honest. But which is also scary to think about too. But I don't do that with many people, so I don't have to worry about it in the future. But that guy for sure was just like bad.
Yeah, yeah. Well, unfortunately, it's part of the sport. Not to like end the interview on a kind of a sour note, but yeah, I mean, I think it's fascinating because, like, especially the part where you say like, I I have to actually change my style to make it look like I'm winning when I'm already winning the way I just think that's fascinating. But and I think it's going to be a fascinating fight between you and Omar. I appreciate you, man, stopping by, taking the time to talk about it, and we'll see you in Nashville. Good luck with the rest of camp.
Cool. Thanks, Brett. I'll talk to you later, man.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.